how do we, so what are these 5 faculties again? You said?
You have perception,
Yeah.
intuition, the will, reason,
Reason.
yeah, imagination. There's 6, and
6.
memory. Like everybody has a perfect memory. It's just weak. I worked with Harry Lorraine, who probably had the best trained memory in the world. And I asked him one time, he said, Harry, how long do you remember something? He said, still don't want to forget it. We had a man, Abdul, over in Saudi Arabia for a matrix seminar that we conducted. And he was teaching, he was a psychiatrist, he was teaching people to memorize the Quran. Jerry Lucas, the basketball player, he was teaching people in San Fran to memorize the Bible. We have a perfect memory. It's just weak, we never develop it. But we grow up and have such a bad memory. Well, there's no such thing as a bad
The
memory.
more you say it, the more you're going to convince yourself that it's weak.
That's exactly, yeah.
Which faculty of the 6 was the hardest for you to tap into and
Well,
become a master
they're
of?
all difficult to tap into because we're programmed not to use them.
Why is that?
Because there's only one problem in the whole world, and that's ignorance. We didn't know we had them. See, people talk about perception, but they don't see it as a mental faculty. You know, it's just a word. If I have a challenge, if there's something really struggling with, I've learned how I'll take and I'll write it out on a piece of paper as clear as I can, as if I was going to give it to you and then you'll understand the same as I understand the problem. I'll put it in the middle of a table and I'll sit and look at it. And I'll keep asking now, is that problem in me or is it on the paper? Is it in me? And I'll work until I get it on the paper, get it out of myself.
For example, what do you mean, like a problem that you might?
Well, anything that I'm trying to figure out maybe how to improve a particular seminar I'm just not happy with. I've been doing it for a long time, you know.
So you would write down.
Yeah, write down
the problem
any
is the
problem
seminar.
you've got. I don't care what the problem is. Maybe you're short of money. You don't have enough money. Write that down.
Right.
You know, you're short of money for a purpose. You were wanting to buy a building or something.
So you look at the paper and then you ask yourself,
Is the problem in me or is it on the paper? And you work until you get it on the paper. Get it out of yourself. So you can look at it objectively, like a stranger would. And then go and sit on the other side of the table. And I may say, now, you know, how would Lewis Howes look at this? How would he handle this? I may go sit at the end of the table and literally move physically and say, how would Earl Nightingale handle this? How would he see this? I may say, how would Napoleon Hill go somewhere else? The person doesn't have to be alive. They could be dead. Their energy's not dead. It's always here. And, well, what you're doing is shifting your perception. As you change your perception, you eliminate the problem. The answer's there. But you've got to get in harmony with it. You know? So any one of them, you take any one of them. The will, like we were talking, the will. If somebody's standing behind you, let's say in a mall, and they're staring at you, you feel them staring at you, don't you?
yeah.
Why? Feeling is conscious awareness of vibration. And when a person's staring, they're concentrating, they're sending such a powerful charge of energy at your brain that you start to feel it. You turn around, sure as hell, there's somebody there staring at you. Concentration increases amplitude of vibration. There's a power flowing to and through us all the time. It never stops. You can photograph the energy leaving the body. Well, concentration increases it, makes it more powerful. So whatever you concentrate on, you're giving more energy to. Emerson said the only thing that can grow is the thing you give energy to. So as you start to learn how to utilize these higher faculties, you start to learn how to improve the quality of your life. And you start to see why you're God's highest form of creation. You know, like I don't see God as a man on a cloud.
Right.
He's going to answer my questions for me. You know, a great author one time said, God will feed every bird, but he's not going to put food in their nest. You got to do it. You know, God's not going to do it for us. We got to do it.
Yeah.
And so we've got these higher faculties. We've got to learn how to utilize them.
Which one was the hardest for you to learn how to utilize, and which one do you think is the hardest for the majority of people?
Intuition.
Was for you and everyone else?
No, not for me.
Intuition for everyone else?
Yeah. because I made up my mind I was going to study that. I saw a guy who was very intuitive, and I wanted to be like that. And so I was fascinated with what he did. He could just look at you and read the situation, and I wanted to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
So I made up my mind I was going to study it. And in a seminar, if I'm teaching this, the one thing everybody wants to know, how do you develop your intuition? Because you can get, intuition is a feeling that you pick up. Intuition reads feeling. Feeling is conscious awareness of vibration. So you're reading vibration. Vibration is a natural law of the universe. Like your body vibrates. You're a vibration, high speed of vibration. Well, you've got to take your mind off yourself if you're going to read the other person's energy. You got to focus on the other person.
You can't be insecure when you're trying to be intuitive.
Oh no.
You can't be doubting yourself. You can't be lacking something.
You have to give all of your attention to the person you're working with. And of course, that's a secret for speaking too. You know, most people don't do that. We're more concerned, what's he think of me? Does she like me? Is my tie straight? Is this?
What am I going to say next?
Yeah. What am I going to say? Am I going to say the right thing? You got to take your mind off yourself totally and put it on the other person, and you got to be relaxed. You got to get very relaxed, and you'll tune into their energy. You start feeling. Like if you're with somebody and you say, God, they were interesting. Why were they interesting? Because they were interesting. You know, if you want to be loving, be lovable. If you want to be loved, be lovable. If you want to have friends, be friendly.
The most interesting person in the room is the most interested person in the room.
Exactly.
That's what I always learned.
That's the truth.
One of the things I used to be, I love everything you're saying. I get so excited. That's why I'm passionate about this, because I was telling you beforehand that I was terrified to speak in front of a few people, in front of an audience of 3, 5, 10. It was terrifying. The idea of being in front of 100 or 1,000 people was like, I'd rather, curl up in a ball when I was 18, 22, those ages. And I remember someone telling me, I heard that somewhere, the most interesting person in the room is the most interested. I said, that takes all the pressure off of me. I don't have to say anything interesting. I don't have to be like this funny, charismatic.
You just have to be interested.
Just listen and ask interesting questions, or ask a thoughtful, genuine question. It doesn't have to be smart. Just
see, most people, they don't even remember the person's name. Why? Because they're not interested in their name. They're too focused on themselves. What does the person think of me? If you're really interested, you're going to remember the person's name.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting, you mentioned there, there's a good story about public speaking. I had studied this stuff for a long time, and I had used it. I knew it worked. I didn't wonder if it worked. I knew it worked.
Yeah.
And all I wanted to do was teach it to other people. It took me 9.5 years to figure out why I changed. And when I learned, all I wanted to do was teach it to other people. But I was afraid. I was very shy, very
Insecure, yeah.
Very insecure. But I had all this knowledge. I was earning a lot of money. In there, I did well. Outside of there, forget it. And on one of Earl Nightingale's tapes, on the recording, called The Magic Word on Attitude. It's so familiar. You're familiar with it?
Oh, let's check it out.
You've got it, John. I will get an original copy and send it.
Oh, please do.
You've got it.
I'll listen. Yeah.
I will send it. Well, he said, now this isn't on attitude. He said, now right here we come to a rather strange fact. We tend to minimize the things we can do, the goals we can accomplish, and for some equally strange reason, we think other people can accomplish things that we cannot. Because you want to realize that you have the reservoirs of talent and ability within you. Now, if you had asked me, do you understand that? I'd say, of course I understood. I've listened to it 1,000 times, at least. Well, I was in the back corner of the room at the O'Hare Hyatt. Bill Gove was speaking to 1,000 people. I was in the back corner of the room. And I was watching him. Bill Gove was the Frank Sinatra speaker, one of the best speakers in the world. And I watched him. He come off, there was 1,000 people, there were about 500 bank here, 500 here, then there was a central aisle. He got to this corner, he had a handheld mic, and he had his hand up. He said, if I want to be free, I've got to be me. Not to me I think you think I should be. Not to me I think my wife thinks I should be. Not to me I think my kids think I should be. If I want to be free, I got to be. And I was watching him and thinking, my God, this guy's so good. If only I could do that. I could never do that. all of a sudden, that record of Earl started to play in my head. Now right here, we come to a rather strange fact. We tend to minimize the things we can do, the goals we can accomplish. And I thought, damn, that's what Earl means. And I suddenly realized, and I have been listening to this thing for years, if Gove could do it, I could do it. And I made up my mind, I was going to learn how to speak like he did, and I was going to get him to teach me.
Wow.
And so he became a mentor of mine. I paid him a lot of money just to sit down and talk to him for a few minutes, a number of times. Now, I speak nothing like Bill Gove.
Right.
I mean, I'm nothing like him. He speaks totally different than me. Although I'll speak to thousands of people at the same time. What he taught me was to be relaxed in front of the audience. That was the big lesson. If you're not relaxed in front of an audience, the audience will know it.
How do you relax in front of an audience when you're terrified?
You've got to think of the audience. You've got to think of how you're going to, what you're helping, how you're going to teach them something.
Another mentor of mine a couple years ago told me something similar, because I've been training in Toastmasters and had coaches and had overcome a lot of my fears of speaking in front of big crowds, and I got pretty good. I was getting paid, big fees and things like that, but I was still nervous a little bit before. I felt a little insecure. And I remember calling him about 15 minutes before, being like, can you give me some grounding? Can you give some coaching? And he said, don't make it about you, make it about them. You're gonna mess up. Be okay with it. You're not gonna remember every word you wanna say. Don't beat yourself up. Focus on them and how you can serve. Don't focus on yourself. And that's when everything started to shift. Just like you said, when you focus on service to the audience.
You got to fall in love with helping that audience.
Helping, giving, doing whatever you can to serve, you stop worrying about everything the way you look. It's the same thing when you're having an interaction with a group of people and you're just listening and you're not worried about what people think about you. You're just being interested in them.
You got to have a very confident feeling in about what you're doing.
How do people build that confidence if they don't have it?
Well, you build confidence by learning. That's the only way you get confidence. Yeah. I went to a nightclub in London, England back in the 60s. Talk of the Town. It was the largest supper club in the world. And the show they had was the Wild West. And it was like a Vegas show, and they'd bring in, that show may run for 2 or 3 years. And they'd bring in the stars to work it. And I went one night, and I had a seat right by the stage. There was 1,000, they'd said 1,000 people down to dinner in the Talk of the Town. It's not open anymore. Wayne Newton was the star.
Wow.
Wayne Newton was a kid. He was 20, maybe 21. His brother was playing guitar in a little group of his. He walked out on that stage, bang, just like that. He owned that place. I never forgot that. That guy was so confident. And he had that audience in the palm of his hand right away. Whenever I go to speak, I will find a place, if I'm speaking to a group, they go in the kitchen, sit down, and get dressed, think you own the place, and just leave you alone. And I'll sit down there, and I see Wayne Newton walking on the stage as a kid. And that's what you gotta do. You gotta really fall in love with the idea of helping the audience, and believe it. And anytime you see a star come out, they own the place when they walk out. But they fall in love with helping you.
Something else, it sounds like you've mastered the power of alter ego. For me, as an athlete, I used to be scared to perform, to play in front of big games. And I used to tap into Jerry Rice because I was a wide receiver and Jerry Rice was, the best. And so I was just like mimicking him. I was like, how would Jerry Rice do this? How did he carry his body, his chest? How did he walk in the field, his swagger, his confidence? And I just acted like I was Jerry Rice. I became him when I stepped on the field, and it helped overcome the insecurities of the nerves by just embodying the energy of Jerry Rice. It sounds like you've been doing that.
I do that in different ways with different people.
Yeah, in different scenarios, right?
Yeah, like years ago, I started to realize the real power of self-image. Studying Maltz's work. And I will, and I've taught this to many people, I will build an image, different parts of my personality. I will see someone that I really, something they do that I really admire, the way they do it. And I will adopt that. Now, I've got this, I've been doing this for years. And if you were to watch me go from one place to another, I never walk fast. Never. When I was a kid, this stuck in my mind. There was another kid, Donnie Miller, lived down the street from us. Now, this was during the Second World War, so there were no fathers at home. They were all always shooting at each other. But his dad was home. His dad wasn't well. His dad had had a heart attack, so nobody went around his house because his dad was sick. They came around the other house. But the doctor must have told his dad to walk. His dad was always dressed, suit, shirt, tie. And I'd watch him walk up and down the street. I'd see him every now and then. He'd walk up and down the street. He had this real relaxed walk about him. And when I was building a self-image, a picture of his dad stuck in my mind. So I sort of mimicked his walk.
Wow.
You know, and I've done different things. Like I used to watch Earl Nightingale record. When I first went to work for him, he had a recording studio. It would be like this, there was a window. My office, I could look in when he was recording. And one day I realized he's talking to that damn microphone.
Right.
It was a microphone. I thought, that microphone's a person. And you create all great broadcasters, they just talk to one person. They don't say you people or you folks or talk to you. But they would be talking, and I realized he's talking to a microphone. So anytime I'm recording, I talk to one person. It's a microphone. If I'm with audience, I talk to one person. It's just little lessons that I picked up to get better at what I was doing. I remember, if a person's negative in an audience, real negative, there could be 500 people in that audience. That one person's energy is so strong.
Stands out, yeah.
And there was a woman that I met, Beverly Lynch, years and years ago when I was at Nightingale, Conant. And I asked her one time, I said, she was the speaker. I said, Beverly, what are you doing? There's a negative person in the audience. She smiled. She says, you talk to the light, not the dark. Wow. So obvious, why'd I miss that? So if I'm talking on there's a negative or a few negative, I just take one person that's super positive, and it doesn't matter where I'm looking, that's the person I'm looking at. It's that person.
So you focus on the positive people.
Always.
Always.
Yeah.
You won't try to put your attention on the negative
No.
person and try to get them to be happy and smile. You just...
If you just keep putting the positive, if they just open their mind for a minute, you're in.
Yeah.
You got to get the information into their subconscious mind.
You mentioned, I think one of the faculties you said was the most challenging is imagination. Is that one of the most challenging for people?
It's not the most challenging. It's something we really want to gain an understanding of, because most people use their imagination, they use it the wrong way. They imagine what won't work. They imagine something bad happening.
What should we imagine more often, every day?
We should imagine you should see yourself where you want to be. You got to live there. There's a great book. You may be familiar with Stella Adler's book, The Art of Acting. Oh gosh, you got to get it. Stella Adler was a great acting teacher. She was a method acting teacher. She studied under Stanislavski, the Russian acting teacher that originated method acting. Marlon Brando wrote the foreword in her book. He was the first method actor to reach superstardom. And he wrote the foreword in her book. Now, Stella Adler never actually wrote a book. A man named Kissel took all of her teaching, all of her lessons for teaching, and he put them into a book. So when you read her book, you're going to her acting classes. And Shakespeare said we're all actors, the world's the stage, and that's true. Well, when you reach a goal, you can act like you're already there. It's already happened intellectually the second you think about it. It's already happened emotionally when you're emotionally involved with it. So it's only a period of time until it manifests in physical form. But because it's not in physical form, we act like we haven't got it yet. Well, so that's why most people stay stuck, because they're acting like they haven't got it yet. Or if I can't act like that, Lewis would see that I haven't got that result, he'll think I'm phony. I gotta quit worrying about what Lewis thinks and start concentrating on what Bob thinks. And so you see yourself, your imagination, you got to be that person. Goethe said that, great philosopher. He said, before you can do something, you first must be something. So you've got to be it intellectually. You've got to be it emotionally. It's like Solomon says, as a person thinks in their heart, the emotional mind. Well, it's only a period of time then until it manifests physically. That's one of the first laws of the universe, is the perpetual transmutation of energy. Energy is moving into form, always. To form, moving into form, through form, back into form again. So we cause it all to happen the way we think and the way we stay locked into ideas.
How should people be developing their imagination on a daily basis in a positive way?
Well, I think they should take time to image what they want. I have a business partner, Sandy Gallagher, who's a brilliant woman, and she rides horses, gated horses, and she's in Kentucky right now. Big tournament shows there. She images herself as a world champion. Every day, she takes the time and she sees herself as a world champion. She sees herself getting the roses, getting the whole thing. And that's what you should do. I think you build the image of what you want. I mean, you obviously imaged this studio before you ever built it.
Right.
I mean, everything you see here was part of the image in your mind. But everything you create twice. Once in here, once out here. You know, so you never get an original painting. You always get a duplicate. The picture's in here.
Wow.
So we have to see ourselves with what we want here. Now we've got enormous deterrent in our paradigm. We're conditioned genetically and environmentally, and that conditioning is controlling most people's lives. That's why brilliant people are broke. Brilliant people are unhappy. Brilliant people never really accomplish very much. They're absolutely brilliant, but their paradigm is controlling them. It's all about intellect. They're smart people. But like, you got to consider where we come from. A little particle of energy from mom, a little particle of energy from dad comes swimming up. That's the nucleus of us. Then that goes on for 280 days, attracting more energy until you make your debut on the planet. And then you're programmed environmentally by your environment. So everything that's going on is going right into your subconscious mind. So you come out, you're programmed genetically. We don't know how far it goes back, 4 or 5 generations possibly. Like when I was a young man, I had red hair. My mother didn't have red hair, my dad didn't have red hair. I got a brother and sister and they don't have red hair, because you think, well, but my mother's father and all his brothers had red hair. So sometimes it jumps a generation. That's why we look like our relatives. It's genetic conditioning. And then there's environmental conditioning. So this is passed down from generation to generation. Now, unfortunately, we're all exactly the same. We got exactly the same potential. Our spiritual DNA is perfect. But that perfection never expresses itself properly because of this paradigm. It's conditioning in our subconscious mind. You see so many brilliant people and they don't make it. I had a good friend of mine, Milt Campbell. He won the gold medal in decathlon.
Well, I was decathlete.
Were you aware?
I was an All-American decathlete.
Well,
yeah.
Milt won in Melbourne in '56.
Wow, okay.
And he won in '52 in Helsinki.
Wow.
Bob Mathias won his second gold. He won the gold in '48 and then in '52.
Wow.
Milt told me, if he told me once, he told me 1,000 times. Every time I was with him. You know, there was a lot of athletes in schools that were better than me, but they quit.
Yeah.
Well, our paradigms get us to quit things.
Why?
Because of programming. You're programmed. You have to ask yourself, why don't they do that? I did a lot of work with the Prudential of America. In fact, I got stuck in the insurance companies for a number of years. I was so effective at what I was doing. And we raised their sales by, one VP said over $1 billion. And all I was doing, getting them to change their paradigm. I was having them change the way they worked. A paradigm, a culture is a paradigm. Every country has a culture. Every family has a culture. A every company has a culture. Well, in the insurance industry years ago, they had what they called debit agents. They went around collecting the money. And there would be a little book like the one you're working with that would have a record in there. I remember we had a book on top of our ice box. It was right near our back door. Mr. Spencer was the insurance man. When I was a little kid, he'd come in, and there was a little book, a little box with some money, and there was always just pennies.
Right.
And he would collect the debit, mark the book, and he'd be on his way. And that's how the insurance business operated. They were called debit agents. Well, then as time moved along, people started to sign a little cheaper sheet of paper or something, and they would automatically draw it out of your bank account.
Yeah.
But the agents didn't change. The agents would just go and sell at night when mom and dad were both there, because you couldn't sell mom if dad wasn't there. You couldn't sell dad if mom wasn't there. This was a programming. So here we are in the 70s. Agents are still going to their office every morning, and they wouldn't go out and sell anybody, because you sell at night. They collected their debit through the day. There was no debit to collect. This had been, for years they were still doing this. And I'd ask them, I'd say, why do you go to your office? Well, you have to go to the office. And they'd be there, and I'd say, why do you have to go to your office? Because we have to go to the office. They didn't know why they had to go.
Yeah.
Then they'd go to lunch, they'd go with another agent. I said, did you ever sell another agent any insurance? No. I said, what the hell do you want to have lunch with them for? I got them to do this. I said, you gotta be like this. You gotta be skin to skin with the person before 9 a.m. And you have to ask every person to buy at least $100,000 worth of insurance. You don't even have to sell them. Just ask them to buy. Well, I got them doing that. They were selling more $100,000 policies in a week than they previously sold in a year in almost every office.
Wow.
You see, that's conditioning, that's paradigm, that's the way they were working. They've been doing it for years. Nobody ever thought to change it. The largest insurance company in the world. And the head office was trying to figure out what I was doing, because wherever I went, the sales were crazy. I was showing them how to change paradigm. Your paradigm is your conditioned behavior.